Hi, everybody. We welcome you to our Saturday morning Bible study class, and it's March 9th, 2019. We are recording from the Plainfield Christian Science Church, Independent, Plainfield, New Jersey, center of the universe, the United States of America. We welcome you all very warmly. And today, our moderator is Shardy from Pennsylvania, but who is now in New Jersey, along with Linda and Luann.
Get started. Good morning. First of all, I'd like to read a quote from Mrs. Doris White Evans, starting on page 207, about the commandments. The commandments were given to Moses by God at a time when the people were sorely in need of divine guidance. Thou shalt have no other gods before me is the first commandment. The other 9 commandments are amplifications of the first commandment. The following commandments teach us how to have no other gods before the one good God, the Father of us all. In the last paragraph, claim your full salvation as a child of God. He loves you and knows you. Your name is written in heaven. You were created for His glory, to know and to do His will. Obey the commandments and find heaven.
Wonderful, thank you. And that's her book,
Yeah.
Sermons and Lectures.
Sermons and articles.
And articles. Yeah, she has a whole article on the 10 Commandments.
There's a lot in that book. Sometimes I think it's not mentioned much, but there's a lot in it. So.
There really is. There's a lot of history of our church in it, too. I guess for those of us in Plainfield, we've it's like written on our foreheads, that book, so we don't talk about it much. But for other people, it's by that I mean we've read it and known it for years. But it's a good one. Thank you, Shardy.
Can we start?
Well, it also says something about the commandments. Obey them, and you find heaven. For sure, that's why we're studying the 10 Commandments in Bible study, because they're really important. And for anybody who's interested in experiencing heaven, for those of you who don't care, then just obey them and don't find heaven. Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, see what happens.
I think that something that goes with this is, I'm sure we read this at our last 10 Commandments, but Bible study. But it was something Ansel found, Linda found, which I thought was really excellent. So maybe she can read it for us again.
It says, I came across this profound lesson about Moses by Mrs. Eddy. It shows the integrity and meekness needed so this science Mrs. Eddy gave us does not become faith-cure and corrupted. So I'll be reading from something that was compiled by Richard Oakes in the Red Book, the Bible Lessons and Sermonettes. Quote, Moses would have been a necromancer or a mesmerist had not God equipped him with the spirit of the 10 Commandments, which made him a law unto himself that was a prohibition to evil. Truth, life, and love guided Moses, and this awakened understanding left him not a trickster to cajole or to wrong his race. Moses could not abuse the power of that immortal and unerring mind, not the erring and mortal mind mortal confers. Abiding by the 10 Commandments, the servant of God, commissioned to do good, cannot trespass on the rights of mind, cannot steal its treasures, or kill its joys any more than it can be a thief of material things and a murderer. The power of Moses, of prophet, an apostle to heal the sick was Christian Science, not mesmerism or the malpractice of mind that breaks the Ten Commandments. It is an outlaw, a secret assassin, trespassing on the secret thoughts and intermeddling with the most sacred rights of mind. The primitive Christian demonstrations of the power of mind were limited to divine science that should govern all phenomena, since it gives harmony to all and discord by none. It gives harmony to all and discord to none, by Mary Baker Eddy.
So, quite wonderful how in living the Ten Commandments, you can keep your life right. I mean, it has to be. And I was thinking, because sometimes it's been voiced concern about our church, how would we keep our church pure? How do we keep it free from pride and other elements of the human mind? And I used to think, oh my gosh, because Mrs. Evans was quite an enforcer in a way, but in just living these Ten Commandments and Sermon on the Mount, by just living it, this process goes into effect. Because I've seen it happen. And if anyone isn't right, if their motives are pure, if they are bound with pride or anything else, they will come up against it, and they will either bow before it and change, I'm saying come against the laws and rules of the universe, or they will end up ejecting themselves. And it's nothing that we have to do. We don't have to excommunicate or fire, or we just have to live these laws. Live the laws. People aren't living the laws. It's like a monkey wrench, and they'll just spin out.
And it's not people, it's not anything that we do. It's the truth. The truth does it. You live the truth, and that truth is a strong rebuke to anything that isn't truthful or honest or pure. And Mary says it either changes or it ejects itself. And it's not up to us what people do. It's up to them.
It's up to us to obey these laws and principles, and to instead of ask who's right, to know what's right by these laws and principles. And I bring this up because this will operate in your home, in your business, in your life. As you live it, it will just start to operate. And it's a most wondrous thing, because it isn't that you have to do anything particularly except live the truth. And that's a wonderful thing. And then God's laws will just...
Well, they are the only law. They are all there is. And that's why in Science and Health, Mrs. Eddy writes, life, truth, and love are a law of annihilation to anything unlike themselves. Period.
What doesn't fit those laws just goes. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's divine life, truth, and love that does it.
Not us. Nor do we look for it. It just happens. As Gary said, yeah, it's not about person. It's about the right thought or the carnal mind. And everyone here is so welcome to be healed and purified. And as long as they're willing to come in a humble spirit, then that's fine. But if anyone gets like they want to control or anything else, then
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work because God controls. And go ahead, Jeremy.
I've thought of this for a while, and I always like to have like a visual to like see how this happens. And I think about like air being loaded into a catapult, tucked away, and if somebody wants to grab onto that boulder as it's getting chucked, that's on them. That's not that's not on us. So I think that feels like a good way to think of it. It's on them instead of they do it.
That's it. And we do everything we can. We go the extra mile to keep them here, to help, change, heal, restore, replenish, whatever's needed. We will go the extra mile. But if they continue in it, then...
I know when I come down here, it's such a big difference. And I can feel that. It's like, you can feel like even like your whole body, you feel healthier. And when you're in that environment where just experiencing the truth and people who do obey the commandments, things like that. When I'm at home and I'm sitting around with family and friends and they don't have the same understanding, and they're discussing things that don't have anything to do with God, and it's just every day. And then when I come down here, it's like a breath of fresh air just to get out of all of that, to feel it. But before I came into science, I didn't understand the 10 Commandments. I knew of them, and my parents used them to control us. But having a better understanding of the 10 Commandments really helps me my own thought process as I go through my day. And when I come down here, it's nice to be at fresh air.
Thank you.
It's good to have you too.
Yeah, it's okay.
We're happy you're here.
Well, and
so I just want to say about comment about I think the value of obedience is that we can be in doubt about what to think or what to do, and we're just not sure. But when it comes to being obedient, it's very, very clear. I mean, so I'm thinking that when you're in doubt about what to think or what to do, then you just say, okay, I'll be obedient. And as you're obedient, then those things will come to you.
thank you. That simplifies it. It's true. Take a commandment or something from the Sermon on the Mount and obey it. It helps cut through the personal sense of things, and that's why we have the rule for motives and acts we work with every day, neither animosity nor mere personal attachment, because that can always kind of grab you and throw you off key. So the question is, again, not who's right, but what is right? By God, what is right? What is the principle's right thing to do? And the more you live it, the clearer it becomes. It's no longer murky. It becomes very clear. The wrong thing will just repel you. It'll sometimes can make you sick until you do something about it.
And for me, it's becoming more and more clear that I need to stay calm and peaceful and wait to hear that still small voice instead of getting upset and letting mortal mind come in.
Thank you very much. That's the key. Me too. I gotta keep my cool. So.
Thank you. And that is what Tom referred to as being obedient.
Yeah.
That's being obedient. Obedient to the first commandment. When there's a question, when there's a problem, when there's an issue and you just don't know, ask God. Have no other God. Don't turn anywhere else. Ask God and then listen. And that is obedience.
Yes, and I often have to walk away from the situation because if I stay where that problem seems to be, then I seem to focus on it. But if I walk away and stay calm, then every time God tells me what the right thing to do is.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it's not just, physically walking away. Sometimes it's just mentally turn thought to God.
She says a lot about that in the Blue Book. You see, I hesitated.
We love the Blue Book.
Blue Book is
a lot in there. Mm-hmm.
And it's Florence's middle name, Florence.
That's right. I love it.
Oh my gosh! And it's also, she says it very, very clearly in Unity of Good. I'll have Gary read in rectifications, and this is Mrs. Evans' father's favorite from Mrs. Eddy, certainly from Post.
This is, she said, in rectifications. How is a mistake to be rectified? By reversal or revision? By seeing it in its proper light, and then turning it, or turning from it.
Turning from it, Debbie. There you go.
We undo the statements of error by reversing them. Through these three statements or misstatements, evil comes into authority. First, the Lord created it. Second, the Lord knows it. Third, I am afraid of it. By a reverse process of argument, evil must be dethroned. First, God never made evil. Second, he knows it not. Third, we therefore need not fear it. Try this process, dear inquirer, and so reach that perfect love which casteth out fear. And then see if this love does not destroy in you all hate and the sense of evil. You will awake to the perception of God as all in all. You will find yourself losing the knowledge and the operation of sin proportionately as you realize the divine infinitude and believe that he can see nothing outside of his own focal distance. Mary Baker.
Oh, yes, thank you. What a wonderful treatment.
Yeah.
And that's on page 20 of Unity of Good. So try it. She says, try this. You're confronted with a problem. Go through these steps instead of the first step, which you're making it a reality out of it. So thank you so much for bringing that up, Debbie. It's such an important point. And turning from it is important because if you're sitting right in the middle of it, it can seem kind of daunting.
And if you can walk away from it, do so.
Yeah.
Right. How many healings are there of Jesus' healings in the Bible where he walked into a room and he told people to leave before the healing took place?
I think just when he would say, "Get behind me, Satan."
Yes, right. And these are the laws and rules of the universe in operation. And they're simple. They're not difficult. We make them difficult through our personal sense, through our pride, which obscures things. Now, I'd like Bruce can read this. This is from Matthew Henry on his commentary on Exodus 20. This is what I have.
God speaks many ways to the children of man, by conscience, by providences, by his voice, to all which we ought carefully to attend. But he never spake at any time so as he spake the 10 Commandments. This law God had given to man before it was written in his heart. But sin so defaced it that it was necessary to revive the knowledge of it. The law is spiritual and takes knowledge of the secret thoughts, desires, and dispositions of the heart. Its grand demand is love, without which outward obedience is mere hypocrisy. It requires perfect, unfailing, constant obedience. No law in the world admits disobedience to itself. Whoso Whosoever shall keep the whole law and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all. From James. Whether in the heart or the conduct, in thought, word, or deed, to omit or to vary anything is sin. And the wages of sin is death.
So this idea of belittling the Ten Commandments, no. We need to have it permeate our lives. Permeate it. Think about it. It affects everything. When you get into what each one means, they're useful every day in your life. It's not just killing somebody with a gun. There are other ways to kill people. There's other ways to steal from people. And it's being done too much. And we have to make sure we start with ourselves that it's not. And I love what he said. The law God had given to man before. It was written in his heart, but sin so defaced it that it was necessary to revive the knowledge of it. And I've always felt this, because as I've said, you think about the whole world, people who've never seen the Bible. Most people instinctively know these truths about adultery or killing, or it's an instinctive thing. It's written in people's hearts by God. And it's this sin that would deface it and turn it upside down and make it think that these are no longer relevant or no longer important to obey. And as Bruce read, what would a law be if it wasn't obeyed?
It didn't demand obedience. It wouldn't be a law. It would be a suggestion.
And this isn't, this is not just some human law. These are the laws of God. So, okay, any comments?
Well, Spurgeon made comment in one of his commentaries that in his time period, which was the 1800s, there was a group, and I don't know the name now, but they were saying you didn't need to follow the Ten Commandments. And so I kind of thought it was more of a, 60s, 70s, 80s, not now period, but we're talking about 1800s. The human mind's been trying to say for a while now. It doesn't need, and you can see the result with the nation of Israel. That's every time they got in trouble because they ripped it from the commandments, or at least the heart of it.
So it had to be written down because people back then were saying, "Oh, we
we don't need that."
I'm not going to listen to my heart.
Yeah.
Well, and it serves as the basis of the laws of this country too.
Right.
Every nation, really.
Yeah, exactly.
That it should be.
Well, and look what's happened to our laws now. Sin has tried to water it down. There was a time when the plaque of the Ten Commandments was posted in every court. It's the basis of the law.
I think it's still in the Supreme Court. I thought that was interesting.
Yes, and I'm very grateful for that. It's on the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court building is beautiful. Really, our buildings in Washington are beautiful because when they were built, they had a dignity and this law in them that you can feel. That's why so many people like to go visit D.C.
And we watch that God protect that court.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Hey, Shardy?
Let's see. Oh, so the topic is continued study of the Ten Commandments. And then I thought it was interesting. Anybody can pick. Tell me anything else. But Exodus 20 and then Deuteronomy chapter 5, because Exodus, that's where it's laid down concisely. And then Moses takes the trouble and the time to go over it again because it's so important, and explains it in Deuteronomy at length. Because he knows he's going to leave them, and he wants them to be safe and happy. It was really lovely. It's strong, but he wants them to know that they're safe if they follow the commandments. And I think we did question number 1 already. Number 1, what do we recall about the first commandment? And if anybody else has anything else.
Yeah, I think we've covered that.
I think we have.
Well, I would just like to say, and we've said it before, but this is the commandment. If I'm ever getting lost, that is my compass. If I start feeling fearful or upset about anything, go back. What other God am I having before the one God? And everything will come back into focus, because there is something that you are worshiping. And because we're taught, humanly taught, that it's okay to think so much about your family or your vacation plans or your business or your home or whatever else, then you get into a worshiping sense of it, and that's all you think about and talk about, and God is out the picture. Well, then you start to have trouble. So remember, always go back to that. Are you worshiping the one God, only the one God? And if you do, that's what keeps you safe. And that is why Mrs. Eddy loved this commandment so much. And that is a point in the Presbyterian and whatever else I had. I never got that from old theology, shall I say, as I did from Mrs. Eddy. This new, fresh concept of the first commandment and how important it is.
Mrs. Eddy also says that it is our weapon, and then it is what will cure all disease. So,
isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
It will cure all disease.
Yes.
It what can't it do? And she also talks about, fear. It'll lop the head off fear. All from the Blue Book.
That I didn't say it because it's all from there.
We can feel you mentally.
Jeremy?
I just thinking about the first commandment. When I first got here, I wasn't sure about animal magnetism. My practitioner said it's belief in a power apart from God. So it makes sense that Mrs. Eddy is the one to explain the first commandment best, because she's the one that explains animal magnetism. So it helps you to go in that direction.
Good point. Thank you.
I was grateful to have the reference from Deuteronomy chapter 5 in our study this week, because in Matthew Henry it says, it speaks of a covenant between God and Israel by Israel's humble petition and God's gracious grant. And he says, we are more strongly bound in a covenant because of our consent and the divine promise.
Thank you.
I think having the right understanding of the Ten Commandments is key, because in having the Ten Commandments given to you in all different directions, have the right understanding, follow the right understanding, and salvation. You're just having the wrong interpretation of what the commandment is, you're still breaking the commandment.
Thank you. And Luann's doing a wonderful job helping any children or young adults that come her way through her pottery shop or however else she gets her hands on them. To teach them this. And they get a good practical, not preachy. And Bruce, what did you tell Mallory and Isaiah? It was so sweet.
I had a chance to talk about the golden rule. They'd never heard about it. I simply said, well, the golden rule is whatever it is you'd like for somebody to do to you, you should do the same for them. And Mallory asked me, why do they call it gold? I says, it's because it's very valuable wisdom. You should have seen the smile on Isaiah's face when he heard that. Also, I went on to say, it takes a very brave person to be the first one to do something kind for somebody else. But once that's done, who knows how much good is going to be done. I heard that. He goes, yeah.
And Bruce was talking to them on their way to school, right?
Yeah.
And then what did you say when they popped out of the car?
Remember the golden rule today.
Now, you see, these are as Linda says, take every moment you can, teach them. And they're thirsting for it, and it's also in them already, as we read in Matthew Henry. They will connect to it. They will remember it. And, I read that beautiful email someone knew from Texas on Wednesday night, and she remembers. She had been going to a Baptist church, but because she'd had a healing from Christian Science, her parents sent her into another town to attend the Christian Science church there, and she had to take a bus. It was quite a distance, but she loved it. She never missed it. She said she hung around town until Sunday school opened up for her, and she would take the bus back home. And she remembers to this day what that Sunday school teacher taught her. Don't ever underestimate the power of this truth to change and affect people's lives, and do not withhold, not when you're feeling inspired by wisdom by God to speak. Thank you.
In my goal to learn how to love better as God loves, I have been working with the phrase, love God with all thy heart, with all thy mind, with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And then I actually put that into my ARC program, and I think it appears in Deuteronomy almost word for word, but if not as such, about 4, 5, or 6 times alone in Deuteronomy. So I was kind of going through the Bible and using that one from the different places.
Thank you, and that's something Tom has emphasized. All the things in the New Testament are in the Old Testament. You just have to sometimes look for them. And, the other thing, Mike, it was such a beautiful, I think you gave it as a testimony. What did you read to your daughter every night? And it would put her to sleep, but she was going to sleep with the truth. The recapitulation or something?
It was actually the platform of Christian Science, which is, I think, in the science. It's on page 332, 331, and that was something that I can't remember exactly the history of it, but that was what Mrs. Eddy had almost started with. I mean, she used recapitulation as teaching, but she also used a platform of Christian Science, and so that was one of her favorite tools, I think, with her students.
Well, that was beautiful, because in giving her the truth like that, when she was just sitting quietly, she was absorbing it. You can't help but absorb it. And it's with her today. So, anybody else?
And, sorry, but it was amazing, because what would happen is, even if she woke me up in the middle of the night, she was completely sleepless. Probably after the first or second or third one of the points, she would be asleep, but maybe it would be restless. But I'd always read it through out loud till the end, and it was just always fascinating to me just to see the sleep become, restless. I mean, restful and deep, and none of this tossing and turning and going on anymore.
That's really beautiful. Anyone suffering from insomnia, I have Gary read to me now. Anyway, to hear that truth, and sometimes being read is a lovely way if it's possible, or you can always turn on your audio.
The website has a lot there.
You can have anybody you want read to you from all kinds of...
I go to sleep every night.
Listening,
The individual read, I go through the whole book. it on so it plays one chapter right after the other, and then plays over my cell phone, and I just leave it right next to my head, next to the pillow, and I lay there and I listen to it till I fall asleep.
The Science and Health?
Yeah, Science and
Isn't
Health.
that wonderful?
All the books, all the books.
All the
I've done to them all.
Wonderful.
I just play them over and over. So nice to have that. So peaceful and they're beautifully read. So it's very easy to listen to, take it in, absorb it, absorbing all this information, taking it in.
You are. All that truth is just.
Well, that's obedience to the first commandment. Is you're putting God in your consciousness and replacing anything else.
Lay there at night and just ruminate about all the wrongs for the day. I'd be like 3 o'clock in the morning before I could fall asleep. And I'd only fall asleep out of exhaustion, being up all day, ruminating for hours. Now I just put on that, and I don't fall asleep until 3 o'clock in the morning, but it's still taking in all that. Sleep's better.
It's restful, like Mrs. Eddy says, that repose when you're in that.
You're working in the truth.
Yeah, but it's very restful. Not exhausting. It's like when you're flailing around.
You had given a testimony one time about how one definition of ruminating is to chew again. Whenever I hear that word, I think definitely don't want to chew that stuff again.
Mortal man ruminated, and the trial began. That's it.
And it is restful to contemplate on all the truth, the knowledge that I'm gaining through all the Bible studies. Because I would ruminate for hours, I'd get like maybe 2 hours of sleep, like fall asleep, and then wake up exhausted. But now I would lay there and listen to the audio, and I'd still only get 2 hours sleep, but I'd wake up refreshed. I still get the same amount of sleep. It's a big difference. Get up in the morning and how I treat the day.
That's wonderful. I heard something very sweet this week. I believe it was someone in Germany. She says she's listening to Martha Wilcox. And she says, no, it wasn't. It wasn't Germany. It was the United States. But anyway, she said that that Carol Reed, she thinks she's listening to Martha Wilcox. She says that it has a gentleness and yet a great strength to it. And so she's finding out things. And I know Martha Wilcox helped me open my thought up to science and health in many ways. And it's been so helpful to her. So you have all kinds of readers who are happy to read to you at night your lullaby story. Anyway, it's a great use, and we thank all our wonderful readers. They're all wonderful, everyone. We love you all, and thank you for doing it. So, okay, are we ready now to move on?
Okay. Question number 2. What does it mean to have graven images?
I've been thinking about this a little bit, and I looked up to grave, and it was talking about carving and delineate on hard substances, and I thought about what am I treating air as if it was chiseled in stone, or in what am I delineating in my thought? And to be careful about that those don't become graven images that I worship.
Very good.
I think graven, by the very definition, means it's man-made. It's supposed to be inherently, divinely natural. That's why I think it's important to be careful about the things that you want. Because what else can you think about if you really want something and you're thinking about it all the time? In other words, it's engraven in your mind. You can't get it out. Mrs. Eddy says that spiritual rationality and free thought accompany approaching science. thought must be free of all of the things that are man-made that are impressed on there, and somehow they seem to stick. The commandment says don't do that.
Thank you. Yeah, I like that idea of Raven, doing it over and over and over until it's Raven. Go ahead, was that Florence?
Yeah, I was just going to say the things that we are fearful of seem to become graven in our thinking. And so they kind of preoccupy us, therefore we'll be worshiping those. And we're not supposed to. I mean, they take the place of God in our thinking. And that's, in fact, becoming like idols, whatever we are afraid of.
Thank you. Very good. Yes. That fear is sometimes what seems to drive us when we become so afraid. And the only thing, really, that helped me break this fear that I had was beginning to understand this, that when I was fearful, I was disobeying the first command. Yes. Because I always thought I was such a good person. I certainly obeyed all the commandments. I wasn't even close to obeying. If I was disobeying the first one so badly, it woke me up. That this isn't just some little thing when I'm afraid of so much stuff. It's a big thing. I'm disobeying the first commandment. I believe that there is a power apart from God. Therefore, I am believing in Satan. Great. Just what I want to do.
Well, your humanly good person was your graven image.
Yes, thank you.
You know, in the days of Moses, there was a lot of superstition in the world. And, you know, there was the belief there was a god of rain, a god of health, a god of sickness, you know, all these gods that people felt affected their lives. So they'd make statues or, you know, think that represented, or they could speak to one of their gods through that. Today, we have other graven images. We have drugs. We have institutions of, quote, higher education, so-called. We have other graven images. The question is, do we worship them?
Anything we worship really becomes a graven image. Personality, children even. You know, some people, all they can talk about is their children. Anything, I feel.
But I like Bruce's comment. Anything man-made, anything human, is a graven image. And really, only in Christian Science do we appreciate the importance of doing away with all human beliefs, all human theories. I mean, we don't stop eating or sleeping yet, but we don't worship them either.
Mm.
We don't worship food.
Right, yeah.
Some kind of food some people get to worship. They gotta have it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, it is worship. Definitely it is. Hopefully we don't, but it can be, I guess. Or if you think you have to have a certain food, or if you don't eat a certain food, you don't feel well, or if you eat a certain food, you don't feel well, all of that stuff, it becomes the God. Like in the Science and Health, that woman or the person, whoever it was, ended up all they could eat was a little bit of bread and water.
And water, yeah.
Now, Kimball went through that. He almost died. And he was healed through Christian Science. In fact, a medical doctor told him that go back to science, go back to science. And so for people who have this food issue, and I have some, I think about him, and he was healed and became a great healer.
I think food has become the current thing to worship. I mean, there are so many chocolate shops and so many beers and so many of everything, coffees, and just it's elevated it to a worshipful, art form that people worship. But I thought Billy Graham had a few words about graven images. An image is basically an idol. And he said, quote, "Despite our blessings, we have become an increasingly idolatrous people. We worship so many of our blessings instead of simply thanking God for them and enjoying them. We worship sport, celebrities, clothes, money, church buildings, politics, positions, abilities, and capabilities. Idolatry is the worship of anything or anyone other than God." I thought that was a nice, simple way of communicating what a mess our society is in right now.
Yeah.
Because people are worshiping everything except God.
Yes.
Yes. And that story, I think it was a nursery story or fairy about the goose, the goose that laid the eggs, and one became so enamored with the eggs, they forgot the goose gave the eggs. Well, that's the analogy there. And the question, are you grateful for life, truth, and love that is in science and health? I used to think, I didn't know if I really was. Because we're always thanking God for whatever, our homes, our families, this or that. But are you grateful? Life, truth, and love is God himself. So are you grateful? And I really pose that question to myself often and think about it. Make sure I am. Who is speaking?
I really like this discussion about the graven because I never even thought about it that way, but, a tool and die maker. So, for example, when they make coins, that's all carved into a piece of steel. But if you make one little mistake, you have to start from the beginning. There's no way to fix it. So it has to be done perfectly, but it's done very gradually. I haven't done that in steel or anything, but I have done it in wax, and you have to be very, very careful. And it's a time-consuming, and, really you work at it. So we're really working at it, creating the wrong thing. And I think graven is just such a wonderful word to use there. It never even occurred to me before.
Thank you very much. No, it's true. And the rest of that commandment, where it talks about thou shalt not bow down thyself to them nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. One of the commentaries says that God was issuing an absolute warning, whether we like it or not. God was warning all of us about the generational consequences of worshiping idols. It is very clear in Deuteronomy that each will die for their own sins, 24:16. But children reared in an idolatrous environment will become infected by that environment. They will become practitioners of that environment. They will become victims of that environment. Is this what you want to do to your children? Or what maybe you are already doing? And not just your children, but all children. I mean, what chance do they have? That's what Mrs. Eddy says in Science and Health too. What chance do these children have put them in that environment where you don't go to seek God? They don't know anything about prayer. They're defenseless. And then we wonder why they're all on drugs and wanting to kill themselves and everything else. I think I spoke about this in the last commandment, but Mrs. Evans used to say sometimes when God can't get your attention, sometimes it hits somebody close to you. Usually, if you're at all have any kind of love in your heart, that's the worst. Don't let it get there or go there.
I think going back to the graven thing, so if one is carving something out and makes a little mistake and says, I'm not going to start from the beginning, and just glosses it over, then every thing from there is already flawed, and it just gets worse and worse. And the first concordance I had was from my church when it closed, which was a Dumbleose, and that's where I really got shocked because I had no idea that my forefathers actually drifted off into these incredible idolatrous things. I mean, that's where the walking kids through the fire, and then, it just goes from bad to worse to worse to worse. Just doesn't seem to end, and that's when I finally clicked in why we aren't supposed to be worshiping any type of an idol other than the real God.
Anyone else on that one?
Just that it's very clearly stated that if you go down this path, the third and fourth generation, that people will hate the true idea and the right concept of things.
And you see this happening, the switchover where to some degree Christianity is considered a bad thing. And of course, it's all the false concepts of it. But we have some responsibility here. And what are we teaching children? If they have the right concept of it, they're safe. So we must never hold back with this. Certainly, any children, anywhere, Luann does. Invite them to your house.
I know for me, if something comes to me while the kids are there and they're asking questions or working on things and things come up, if I don't answer them, because I get inspired with the answer, and if I don't answer them, then I feel responsible for their lives, for the information that they're taking in. I have to tell them the thought that came to me, because I feel so responsible that I don't.
And thank you, and we should, because we
should
are.
all feel that way. Because look at what the devil error. I mean, look at how it's operating. It's closing the churches. You look around the world. How many people are going to church anymore? And it's taking over the schools. We've got a lot of schools where it's illegal to read the Bible in the school. I mean, where did that horse crap, come from? So we are in a war. We need to recognize that we are in a war. We don't want to suffer the consequences of our children and their children and their children being affected by the consequences of worshiping all these other idols.
Mrs. Eddy makes a strong story, if you finish.
No, go ahead.
No, she makes a strong point on page 61 of Science and Health, where she says, if some fortuitous circumstance places promising children in the arms of gross parents, often these beautiful children early droop and die. There's a declining, a languishing that happens when they are in the environments like Mary talked about just now.
Thank you. That was the statement I was looking for in Signs of Health. Yes, it's a very sobering statement. You know, and you think of how resilient children are, how they can survive all kinds of situations. Many of you are examples of that who grew up in unhappy homes. But it has to be really bad when this happens. And mainly it's their little souls are not being fed.
I feel often that I was just at that point where it was, I had to have science then. And when I came into Christian Science that night, that was the first night that I called you. And that was like the point, because I identify with what she just said, that I was completely, you know,
drooping.
I was like a wet towel. I was at the point where I was either going to live or die. This is the moment. I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to make that phone call, because if I don't, I'm going to die. And that's where I was when I called. Because of all the stuff that occurred earlier in my childhood, and trying to work through it with psychiatrists and drugs and all of that stuff, and it's just spiraling and spiraling, getting not taught the right things. You know, once you start learning the truth and you start learning about God, who God is, and having the right interpretation of God, everything just starts falling into place and making sense. And then you're like, wow. You know, and sometimes I say, if I only knew all this stuff earlier, but all of that stuff that I experienced growing up got me to this point where I could really, really appreciate God.
Yeah.
I feel so grateful for that. Everything about my past and all that stuff. I don't really remember. But I lived it every day, even though it had stopped occurring. I lived it every day until I came into science. And now I don't remember half of it. So it's wonderful.
And it has made you a passionate person.
Look what God has done with your life now. He's using you, but you, yeah. And the idea that you don't remember it is truly miraculous, because that's how it works. Or if you do remember it, it no longer has any sting. It was just something that, you know, okay, well, it led me to where I am now, and that's all that matters. Where it used to have a sting to it. That's how God works. That's how it's been for others of you, certainly Jeremy and others.
Yeah, it's like remembering a TV show you watched once. It means as much as that.
And honestly, that's all it was. That's the truth of it.
You have reversed the mistake. And there's no memory of it once it's reversed. No longer engraven in the mind. Unengraved.
See what God cannot do. So if you've got a graven image, God can wipe it all away. He makes all things new.
This is all proof that God is good. That God is all in all. He never leaves any of us hopeless.
I was thinking of Gilbert Carpenter, and now just know that it never happened.
Yeah, never happened in divine love.
This is why, coming here, I think it's so important that we watch for our children. Every night we should be praying for every day. Doesn't matter when. Pray for our children in our universe.
And what was that statement in the Blue Book that I found a while ago?
Father, thank thee that nothing comes between thee and this little child. That's not perfect.
Prayer, but, well, it's pretty close. Father, I thank thee that nothing becomes between thee and this little child. can know that, or you can know it for a big child too.
Yeah, and afterwards I say to big children too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nothing can come between God and a little child or a big child or anyone, but to know it. When I found that in the Blue Book, Florence.
Yeah.
Quite a treatment, just one little sentence.
Yeah, I keep it on my phone.
Okay.
And pictures.
Beautiful. Beautiful treatment.
That is so wonderful because I'm very grateful. This is my daughter's last year in college because the brainwashing that's going on in the universities is beyond comprehension. I mean, they wouldn't put people in prison and torture them the way they are kids.
Thank you, Mike. You are so right. It is. Yeah.
Wicked.
Linda's finding that with her son. Any of you with any sense will find it out if you know what your children are doing in school. Mike does. You've got to watch what's going on there. It is wicked brainwashing, and it's been planned. We've been working on it for a long time. And if they can get our youth, then eventually they'll get it. Get our country. It can mean enslavement and worse.
Another 1900 years of darkness. They get their way.
Yeah.
So it's 11 now. We still.
I didn't know what time it was.
We have other commandments to go over specifically, that we haven't. So maybe
we'll have a couple of weeks coming after Tom next week, and I can even help Shardy spread it out. We'll get it done.
It's quite a privilege.
It's hugely important. And all of these, the roundtables and the Bible studies, we put dates on them, but they are timeless. And you can listen to ones that were done, a long time ago and still get inspiration from them. So.
And a lot of people are.
And I thank God. And I just thought this was the most beautiful poem. I'm probably going to read it every day for the rest of my life. and Carol found it. It's going to be in our next Liberator. It's from the Christian Science Journal, June 1885. And the point of it is, since we've been talking about heavy-duty things, if you think you have no trust, or if you think you have no trust in God or belief, this is this little poem. There is no unbelief. Whoever plants a seed beneath the sod and waits to see it push away the clod, he trusts in God. Whoever says when clouds are in the sky, be patient, heart, light breaketh by and by, trust the Most High. Whoever sees 'neath winter's field of snow the silent harvest of the future grow, God's power he must know. Whoever lies down on his couch to sleep, content to lock each sense in slumber deep, knows God will keep. Now, isn't that the truth? We get up every morning and trust God to be there for us. So don't ever think you don't trust or that you don't have faith. Think of that little poem. Yes, you do. Thank you all. Thank you, Shardy.
Thank you, Shardy.
Thank you, Shardy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you.